Hello everyone, Biochemistry web channel is here with the new content, Bioelements-I. I wish it to be useful to all biochemistry lovers. Let's start. And what are the contents of this topic? We have an introduction part, then common elements found in the body. We will look to the elements, and the short information about analysis techniques will be given. And then we start the major content, macro elements. Calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, sodium, chlorine, potassium, and sulfur. Organisms require minerals to survive, to reproduce, to sustain their life, to develop, to grow, etc. And we call them bioelements. In other words, bioelements are the minerals of life. Most of the minerals present in the structure of the organism are substances commonly found in nature. In particular, the proximity between seawater and cytoplasm in terms of mineral composition is thought to be proof that life began in the seas. In living organisms, there are elements such as calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, potassium, sodium, chlorine, sulfur, iron, copper, cobalt, zinc, manganese, chromium, molybdenum or molybden, fluorine, selenium, iron, and etc., along with carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, which participate in the organic structure. And what I have written in bold are the elements that will be conveyed in the subject content. The others, such as the arsenic, boron, bromium, and others, are not really known for what they do. If they are taken with food, it is thought to be accidental, or they may cause toxic effects depending on the amount in the body. And here, the boron undoubtedly draws attention here. In recent years, research in terms of animal health has attracted the attention. Calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, potassium, sodium, chlorine, and sulfur. These are found in large amounts, or large quantities in the organism than other elements, and their blood levels are at the milligram percent level, which we generally express them in milligram per deciliter or millimole per liter. These elements are called macroelements or major elements or minerals, but in general macroelements. Iron, copper, cobalt, zinc, manganese, chromium, molybdenum, fluorine, selenium, and iodine. These elements are present in smaller amounts, in microgram levels or micromole, even for some nano and pico levels. And these elements are called trace elements and also referred as microcatalytic elements. We call them the catalytic elements because we know that elements, but in general we prefer trace elements, act in conjunction with enzymes, hormones, and vitamins. In other words, they are essential components of enzymes for some enzymes, hormones, and vitamins. This means without these trace elements, enzymes or hormones or vitamins which they require them cannot be active. And diseases caused by the presence of mineral substances and especially trace elements in the animal organism below or above normal levels have gained great importance in the livestock economy, especially in recent years. They must be taken with food. The forms of minerals in the diet or ration should not harm the digestive system, should be in a form suitable for absorption, and should be used in metabolism, or should be in the form that can be used in metabolism. Mineral requirements should be carefully evaluated when preparing diets. Minerals participate in the structure of many tissue in the organism. The functions of trace elements in cell metabolism are particularly diverse, such as acid-base balance. They have function in osmotic pressure, membrane permeability, occurrence of tissue sensitization, transmission of a neural impulse, as I said, hormones and enzymes perform the specific functions in the presence of these elements they need. It is extremely important in the fulfillment of the life functions of the living being with growth and animal production or yield. The organism's need for mineral substances and trace elements depends on the effect of various factors. Energy and mineral balance is a very important concept, especially in animals with high productivity levels. The trace element content of soil, water, and feedstuffs, the absorption patterns in the digestive tract, the interaction between trace elements during absorption, their storage in the body, and the characteristics of the animal itself reduce or increase the requirement. So there are too many factors which determines the requirement level of these elements in a given species. And here is a figure or a map of the Australia and also the Tasmania, which I put this figure from an article published by Judson and Reuter in 1999, and the title of this article is Selenium in Australian Soils. And it is recognized that the mineral deficiencies or excesses are concentrated in specific areas and are directly related to the soil structures. So to determine the soil content of minerals, an example is seen here about the selenium, is so important for the animal breeding or the livestock or the health of the animals. Such as in the figure, the areas in the black painted. Let me show you these areas, the black painted areas, as is here, the areas at risk to selenium deficiency. So, in theory, if there is an animal breeding or animal grazing is happening in these areas, the vets and the farmers should be very careful in terms of the selenium content of the diet. And here there are some cross marks, as you see, little areas comparing to the deficient areas, which it is reported as that areas contain the toxic levels of selenium. So either deficient areas or the toxic areas must be revealed for the production of animals or for the animal grazing or feeding regimes. Not only animals, also it's important for the humans. And a good figure here again, a map of a world, as you see the globe, all countries are seen clearly. It's a article published by Podgorski and Berg in 2020, and the article titled Global Threat of Arsenic in Groundwater, published in Science, a highly prestigious academic or scientific journal. And this figure, which the researchers revealed that a figure, a map of arsenic levels in groundwater, which some areas are clearly shown that they contain high arsenic levels, which are the risk areas. And we know the arsenic naturally occurring in groundwater affects millions of people worldwide. So the Podgorski and the Berg created a global predictive map of groundwater arsenic. And this map revealed areas known to be affected by the arsenic and areas of concern that had not previously been documented. By combining the global arsenic prediction model with household groundwater use statistics, it is estimated that 94 million and 220 million people are potentially exposed to elevated arsenic concentrations in groundwater, with the vast majority, as you see here, in Asia. So, a good study result showing us each country or each area require a study to reveal the content of minerals in soil or in groundwater or in feeds. What are the common elements found in the body? As we divide the minerals, the bioelements into two classes, sorry, correction. Where the one is the macroelements and another one is the trace elements. Also, this is a subclassification of trace elements, which we have an additional ultra trace elements, but we can ignore these classifications. So these two columns represent the trace elements and here the macro elements. And we study the bold uh, ones in this topic. And here the macro elements, calcium to sulfur, and here is the trace elements that we will study for some, not all of them, such as the boron and nickel. So we know these are so important for any living creature, especially the creatures that uh, wet any wet study, and this require and we need to perform analysis or to perform analytical techniques to measure of that minerals in body fluids or in soil, groundwater, feed, plants, etc. And there are various methods that we can use, but the ones mostly used in clinical laboratories, which primarily focus to measure the blood levels of these elements. In general, we use calorimetric, photometric techniques and ion selective electrode ISET techniques, especially for the cations and anions such as sodium, potassium. We prefer the ion selective electrodes, but for the calcium, the total calcium, I mean the magnesium, phosphorus, we prefer to use calorimetric and photometric techniques. And as well as there are more other techniques such as flame photometer, fluorometer, atomic absorption spectroscopy, emission spectroscopy, and ICP-ES, which means inductively coupled plasma emission spectroscopy, inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometry, and ion chromatography. And as you see, we have too many options. So the option which we need to perform depends on the type of the biological sample and also depends on the level of the mineral we'll look for in the matrix. So if you want to go more deeper, such as to measure the small quantities and extremely small quantities, such as pico, for example, we need more precise and accurate methods, or we need methods that we can measure the required uh, levels. And then here a good example is ICP, MS, ES, so we can use them. Also, it depends on the matrix, it depends on the regulations, it depends on the guidelines published by national and international associations or the clinical biochemistry federations or societies, etc. So it comes for macro elements. And we will start with the calcium. In nature, it is found in soils together with carbonate and phosphate anions. It dissolves easily in water with the effect of carbon dioxide and passes to plants. Therefore, grass-feeding creatures get enough of it. If drinking water is not too soft, it is also a good source of calcium for humans and animals. And as you may know, calcium is mostly found in teeth and bones in the organism, in the mammals. And also the calcium is the main building block of bones and teeth, or a constitutional building block of teeth and the bones or the skeletal system. But it's not the only building block. Also, phosphorus, magnesium, and other the molecules can participate into the structure of the bone and teeth. 1.4 to 2.6% of the animal body consists of calcium. And 99% of this calcium is found in the skeletal system in the form of hydroxyapatite crystals. Developing, pregnant, lactating animals and laying hens need plenty of calcium. So this means depends on the physiological state of the animal, the requirements of calcium is changed. And this is not only for calcium, this is for all minerals. And for a balanced diet, calcium and phosphorus must be taken in appropriate ratio with food. And this ratio varies between animals, such as in general, I can say in 2 to 1, but while in chickens, 5 to 1 or 7 to 1. And don't forget and be careful, the ratios indicated are for ration content or the diet content, not the ratio of body content. Calcium ingested with food are dissolved from other molecules in the stomach by the reaction of gastric hydrochloric acid. From the stomach, calcium ions pass into the intestine where they combine with free fatty acids. The resulting calcium salts are emulsified into small emulsions by the emulsifying action of bile acid and absorbed from the small intestine. The effect of low pH, straight presence, and vitamin D increases calcium absorption. And vitamin D provides absorption of calcium from the intestines by increasing the calcium binding protein synthesis. So this is the effect of vitamin D. And vitamin D is an essential component of calcium metabolism in terms of regulation of calcium balance of the body. In blood serum, calcium exists in three forms. Actually, not for blood serum. Also, we can say calcium exists in three forms in body. The one is the ionized calcium. We call also we also call it the free calcium, and also there are two abbreviations, the ICA and the Ca2 plus, or just numeric 2 and a plus. A diffusible form attached to citric acid, carbonic, and the phosphoric acids, and the calcium proteinate. Non-diffusible form bound to plasma proteins or bound to proteins. And so when we look at the ratios of these three forms, the second form, the diffusible form, has the least part, and the ionized calcium is 45 to 60, calcium protein is 35 to 50. And we need to ask a good question. Which of the forms, which form here, as you see, which form is the physiologically active form? And the answer is ionized calcium. The ionized calcium is the physiologically active calcium form. And there are some molecules which are responsible for the regulation of blood calcium concentration, or in the regulation of calcium in body. And we have three important molecules: parathyroid hormone, the calcitonin, and the vitamin D3, calciferol. And also there is vitamin D2, which is ergocalciferol or ergocalciferol. And actually they have the same physiological effect in the body. And here the D3 refers the animal's origin. Also look at the name is chole, which this term comes from the cholesterol. And cholesterol is a sterol of animals. And vitamin D2, as you see, it's ergocalciferol or ergocalciferol. And ergo means plant source. So this is the plant vitamin D. And sometimes we omit, we just use vitamin D because they have the physiological effect, both same physiological effect. And vitamin D3, as I said, it's an animal vitamin D. It is synthesized in the body. And the vitamin D has a serine or sterol structure, and also it affects as a kind of steroid effect. It promotes transcription of calcium binding protein, which the target organelle or the target part in a cell is DNA. Is DNA to promote the transcription of genetic code, thus then translation, and so as a result, the protein synthesis. This is why it is also referred as a steroid hormone. Thus, for all of them here, for all molecules, we can say them these are the hormones which are responsible for the regulation of blood calcium concentration. Parathyroid hormone, or shortly the parathormone, is the main hormone involved in the regulation of blood calcium levels, and calcium demand causes the secretion of parathormone. And this hormone increases the blood calcium concentration and decreases blood phosphorus levels. And the hormone acts directly on bone and kidney and indirectly on target cells in the intestine. It increases tubular absorption of calcium and increases urinary excretion of phosphate. Actually acts on bone to mobilize the calcium because the bones are the storage of the calcium. So bone can serve calcium for the body for a while if there is a lack of calcium content in the diet. And in the effect of parathormone in kidney is the reabsorption of calcium, and here the indirect effect on intestine occurs via the activation of vitamin D because parathormone activates the vitamin D which occurs in the kidney, and then vitamin D goes to the target cells located in the intestine, the mucosal cells. So the effect of parathormone on bone tissue occurs via increasing osteolysis and the number of osteoclasts on the bone surface. Thus, it provides mobilization of calcium from bone tissue to extracellular fluid. And as I said, bones are a good store of calcium. This hormone increases urinary extraction of type 1 collagen metabolites such as hydroxyproline and the collagen telepeptides. And part hormone activates the enzyme 1-alpha hydroxylase in the kidney. And in turn, this enzyme is the key enzyme which attach an hydroxyl group at the first carbon or the first position of the strand ring, which turns the inactive vitamin D to its active form. And the chemical name of the active vitamin D is 125 dihydroxycholecalciferol, or shortly 125 hydroxy dehydroxy vitamin D3. And so this active form of vitamin stimulates the absorption of calcium from the intestine and also the absorption of calcium from the bones into the blood. The second hormone is calcitonin. It is released from thyroid T cells in response to hypercalcemia. Thus, we call calcitonin, or we say calcitonin is the antagonist of parathormone. It reveals its biological function by acting on target cells, especially in bone and kidney. And parathormone and calcitonin, as I said, are hormones with antagonist effect on bone resorption. However, they have a synergistic effect on decreased renal tubular phosphorus reabsorption. Calcitonin decreases the skeletal calcium transfer to the plasma, and its activity is not dependent on vitamin D. And vitamin D, the active form, or the cholecalciferol, which the active form I said, 125 dihydroxyvitamin D3 or cholecalciferol, it increases the intestinal absorption of calcium and phosphorus and maintains a certain balance of these electrolytes in extracellular fluids, thus allowing proper mineralization of the bone matrix. Small amounts of vitamin D3 are necessary for parathormone to exert its effect on bone. And don't forget, vitamin D3 is also considered as a hormone. And the target cells of the active vitamin D3 are intestinal mucosal cells, and they increase active transcellular calcium transport by inducing the synthesis of calcium binding protein. What are the functions of calcium? And the well-known one is, it is a component of bones and teeth, affects permeability, blood vessel walls, and cell membranes. It is necessary for muscle contractions and for nerves to transmit impulses. It is involved in the clotting of blood and milk, participates in the activation of some enzymes. So this means it is also cofactor of some enzymes such as lipase, ATPase, 6-dehydrogenase. The calcium also, the ionized calcium is also the secondary messenger in hormone action. This is also an important function of calcium. Don't forget, the calcium is a secondary messenger in hormone action. In domestic animals and humans, the product of milligram% of calcium and inorganic phosphorus in serum is normally 36. If the ratio below 30, rickets in the young and osteomalacia in the elderly can occur. Serum concentration can be measured by techniques such as calorimetric, atomic absorption spectroscopy, and also the ICP-MS. In general, in clinical laboratories, the calorimetric methods based on arsenic-3 or galaxol base are used. And it is expressed as milligram per deciliter in blood serum or millimole per liter. A decrease in blood calcium concentration is called hypocalcemia. And there are many reasons or many causes that can lead to hypocalcemia, such as the parathyroid hormone deficiency, chronic renal failure, hypoproteinemia, rickets, osteomalacia, milk fever in cattle, and vitamin D deficiency. And decrease in blood calcium concentration is called hypercalcemia, and some causes are neoplastic conditions such as parathyroid adenoma, multiple myeloma, and also hypervitaminosis D. And here in this table, you see the serum calcium concentration, reference ranges of serum calcium concentration in some species, cattle, dog, cat, and horse. And here in this picture, actually, this is a radiograph of a living being showing the osteomalacia, and in the coxa, the loss of bone integrity in the pelvis area. And this is a normal pelvis structure, and this is the pelvis structure with osteomalacia. And in rickets, seen in a dog here, the abnormal development of extremities, and here the milk fever, which is seen in cows, especially after parturition, due to the calcium depletion. And here you see a cow suffering from milk fever, hypocalcemia, as the cow needs calcium. And it's a problem that can occur postpartum or after the parturition due to the depletion of body calcium stores. And now we are hearing the sound, a sound of veterinary services arriving. And we will watch the results after a short while. And yes, the vet has just come. And you may guess the vet will administrate calcium containing liquids, a kind of a calcium treatment, in other words. And an important notice for you: Of course, what is described here is not a description or recommendation of a treatment protocol. I'm just showing you this video to explain the situation to you to make it more permanent in your mind. Undoubtedly, there is a strict medical training behind the images or behind the videos conveyed here, and the authority belongs only to veterinarians to diagnose or treat any problems of animals. And now we are waiting for the result. And the circles are getting muddy and heavy rain last night. And then now vet is helping the animal to push the cow to stand up. And the cow continues. And yeah, here is the result. And she is looking for her baby. The cow is standing and moving. Yeah, off to find her cow. Yes, I hope you like it. The formation of the eggshell in chickens is also related to calcium metabolism. Calcium absorbed from the blood and carbon dioxide formed as a result of metabolic events, especially carbohydrate metabolism, and pickup ions form as a result of reaction with water combined to form the eggshell consisting of calcium carbonate. If the hens are not getting enough calcium, they continue to form the eggshell by supplementing it from the bones for a while. Even if they give one egg a week, they continue to give eggshells even if the eggshell is thin. However, after a while, they become unable to stand due to calcium depletion, and the decrease in egg production in very hot temperature is seen due to the increase in the number of respirations in the animals, which causes them to exhale more carbon dioxide, thus lesser carbon, lesser calcium carbonate. And we'll finish the calcium. It's time for phosphorus. In nature, phosphorus is commonly found in soils as compounds. And of these, phosphates, pyrophosphates, and triphosphates are of most interest to the organism. It is also found in significant amounts in milk and dairy products. Inorganic phosphorus constitutes 0.75 to 1.10% of the animal body, and more than 80% of this phosphorus in the body is found in hydroxyapatite form in the skeletal system together with calcium. And the remainder is intracellular in soft tissues. And phosphate has intracellular main anion and has organic and inorganic forms. Phospholipids, nucleic acids, ATP, phosphoproteins, or any organic molecule carrying phosphate is an example of organic form of phosphate. It has important roles in many metabolic processes, such as energy metabolism, delivering oxygen, muscle contraction, and skeletal integrity. Serum phosphorus concentration is determined by the balance between intestinal absorption of dietary phosphate, storage of phosphate in the skeletal system, and extraction of phosphate in the urine. Only 30% of intestinal phosphate absorption occurs in an active vitamin D dependent manner. And the key role in maintaining serum phosphate homeostasis is provided by the kidney. The reabsorption of phosphate occurs in the renal proximal tubules. And renal phosphate reabsorption is under tight hormonal control. And the hormones are parathyroid hormone or parathormone shortly, and fibroblast growth factor 23. Fibroblast growth factor 23. And also there are some other hormones which requires more study to reveal or to understand their function. The ester phosphates entering the bone cells with the circulation are degraded by the enzyme phosphatase and converted into inorganic phosphate ions. Inorganic phosphates combine with calcium ion and turn into insoluble tertiary calcium phosphate, which will lead to hydroxyapatite crystals. Small amounts also found as a magnesium phosphate in the bone. And thus bones are considered to be a very good phosphate start, as was told in calcium. The bones are good sources of calcium and phosphate. Most of the phosphate in the body is found in bones as tertiary calcium phosphate and hydroxyapatite. And inorganic phosphorus is found in serum as phosphate. If the determination of inorganic phosphorus in serum is not performed in a short time and delayed, the organic bound phosphorus in serum is enzymatically converted into free inorganic phosphorus over time. And serum inorganic phosphorus values are determined to be higher than normal. And so we should be very careful in analyzing phosphorus, especially we should be very careful in the period control. The time we collect the sample and the time we perform the analysis is important. What are the functions of this precious element? It is found in the structure of bones and teeth. It is responsible for keeping the pH value at a certain level. Remember the buffers we talked before, and we have a phosphate buffer system. Maintains normal calcium concentration in the blood. And the one that I like most, phosphorus is important in the accumulation and transfer of energy to the required areas, and an essential component in carbohydrate metabolism, especially in the glucose breakdown, which we call it glycolysis. All intermediate products in glycolysis are phosphate esters. Also, to attach a phosphate group to a carbohydrate is a kind of activation. The cells activate monosaccharides such as glucose, galactose, fructose for further metabolic reactions. It's so important. And also ATP. What is ATP? It's an energy molecule or energy fuel in the body. And what is the name of ATP? Or ATP operates what? It's adenosine triphosphate. But look at the structure of the DNA, which consists of n number of nucleotides, and focus on the structure of the nucleotides. Nucleotides carry phosphates. And we can increase the examples. Phosphates are very important. Excretion from the body occurs as inorganic phosphate in the urine and to a lesser extent in the feces. As a result of the precipitation of phosphates in the urinary tract during excretion, phosphate sand and stones are formed. Serum levels are measured using calorimetric, photometric methods in many clinical laboratories, as we do. And the main principle of these methods is the formation of phosphate complex with molybdate. And in general, we express as milligram per deciliter or millimole per liter in SI unit. And here you see the reference ranges for certain phosphorus concentration in different species, human, cattle, dog, cat, and horse. And if the blood levels of phosphate decreases below the minimal range, we call it hypophosphatemia. Hypophosphatemia. In calcium, hypocalcemia. And also remember, the emia refers the blood. In the case of phosphorus insufficiency, the amount of inorganic phosphorus in the blood falls, lack of appetite arises, and the milk is decreasing in cows. In chronic cases, rickets, osteomalacia are encountered, and it's related to calcium. In advanced cases, chewing bone and eating carcasses are seen. Hyperphosphatemia, which means the increase in blood phosphorus level, and acute, especially in acute and chronic renal failure and in catabolic stress conditions. And also in maybe in the hypervitaminosis D, osteolytic bone diseases, intensive cell destruction, hypoparathyroidism, etc. It's time for magnesium. In nature, magnesium is abundant in seeds and green plants. Meat, milk, and seafood also contain large amounts of magnesium. In the organism, it is most abundant in bones, approximately 70%, followed by muscles and nerves. Its concentration in tissues is higher than in body fluids. For example, in blood plasma, it's about 2 to 4 milligram per deciliter, while in aerosols, it is about 6 milligram per deciliter. So the intra and extracellular concentration of magnesium differs. In bone, 1.5% is present as magnesium phosphate. Soft tissues contain 3 to 5 times as much magnesium as calcium. On average, 30 to 50% of ingested magnesium is absorbed from the small intestine. In ruminants, a considerable amount can be absorbed from the rumen. Excessive amounts of calcium, phosphorus, oxalic acid, phytate, and long-chain saturated fatty acids adversely affect magnesium absorption. Absorption is increased by protein, lactose, vitamin D, growth hormone, and antibiotics. When absorption decreases with age, it can be reabsorbed from the kidneys. And absorption happens with different mechanisms such as paracellular diffusion, transcellular active transport. And magnesium is extracted from the body in three ways. And the one is gastrointestinal tract. Most extracted magnesium is found in feces, and problems such as malabsorption syndrome, enteropathies, and cholestatic liver diseases increase the intestinal loss of magnesium. And the second way is the breast gland throughout lactation, and this only happens in lactating animals. The mammary gland actively secretes magnesium into milk. And this is a favorable for the baby, but it's a kind of loss of magnesium for the mom, for the mother. The ratio of milk magnesium to serum magnesium is on average 5 to 1. The third way is kidney. The kidney plays the main role in the regulation of magnesium balance and its serum concentration. It accomplishes this by reabsorption in the ascending handle, and this reabsorption rate is regulated by the availability of dietary magnesium, some hormones, and serum calcium and magnesium concentration, and also the urinary calcium expression. Its concentration in blood is expressed in milligram per deciliter and measured calorimetrically using the kissolidal balloon method in clinical laboratories. In general, What are the functions of magnesium? Together with calcium and phosphorus, it's involved in the bond formation. Magnesium is a cofactor of many enzymes such as the ATPase, the carboxylase, kinase, arginase, etc. It plays a vital role in the normal function of the muscular and nervous systems, such as inhibits the ATPase activity of myosin in muscle contraction. In turn, actomyosin stimulates the activity of adenosine triphosphate. And consequently, magnesium plays a role as an enzyme activator, as a cofactor of enzymes, especially in carbohydrate metabolism, and also in other reactions such as protein digestion for cofactor of peptidases. Extracellularly, it is involved in the production and degradation of the acetylcholine. And acetylcholine, is the first neurotransmitter to be discovered or identified. And it's a chemical transmitter in the central nervous system and as well as in the parasympathetic nervous system of many organisms, including humans. And acetylcholine causes the depolarized muscle cell to contract by opening voltage-sensitive sodium channels in skeletal muscle, striated muscle fibers. Blood magnesium values are easily maintained at a constant level under normal conditions because the magnesium requirements are relatively low. And here in the table, you see the reference ranges of serum calcium concentration in different species. And you can compare with these values with the calcium and phosphorus values. Hypomagnesemia is a decrease in blood magnesium concentration. Clinical disorders related to magnesium deficiency are common in cattle and sheep. It develops slowly in cows and beef cattle and rapidly in dairy cows and sheep. Gastrointestinal diseases with malabsorption, excessive extraction of magnesium in urine due to the continuous use of the diuretics, kidney diseases, liver cirrhosis, endocrinological pathologies, inflammatory conditions can lead to hypomagnesemia. In severe magnesium deficiency or when the magnesium calcium ratio is low, acetylcholine is released in excess and tetany symptoms associated with magnesium deficiency occur. This phenomenon is known as grass tetany or grass staggers. And the tetany is defined as the involuntary contraction of muscles resulting in spasm and cramping. And the concomitant occurrence of moderate hypocalcemia makes grass staggers similar to milk fever. A high level of protein in the urine is an important diagnostic criterion in grass stagger in differentiation of these conditions. Hypermagnesemia is an increase in blood magnesium concentration, and excessive levels can have dangerous consequences. And kidney diseases, endocrinopathological problems such as hypothyroidism, Addison disease, can lead to hypermagnesemia. And elevated blood magnesium levels have a depressant effect on the central nervous system. And here you see the photos of an animal suffered from hypomagnesemia, suffered from grass staggers. And unfortunately, she lost her life. Magnesium deficiency will lead to excitability. In the early stages, the cow will appear nervous, with a stiff leg gait and often carrying a high head and a wide-eyed stare. And muscle tremors will become pronounced, and if suddenly excited, the cow will fall and go into hypomagnesemia tetany, as you see the animal fall. In the figure, in the photos, an uncontrolled seizure state is depicted. The cow's legs will either be stiff or contracted or shaking violently. The head will tilt backwards in a violent spasm, and the eyelids will flutter with a loud click when approached by hand. And some cows will be found dead with the ground around them shattered. underlining the fact that grass tetany is a real emergency and is fatal in a very short time. And thanks to the Irish farmer journals and the authors posting this photo, and also by clicking from my website, by downloading the document and clicking the link provided here, you can read more details about the case. Sodium potassium chlorine. Sodium is most abundant in nature, in seawater. People did not suffer from deficiency of this element thanks to their intake in the form of salt. It is found sufficiently in plants such as carrots, cauliflower, celery, spinach, and in fruits of animal origin such as eggs, meat, and dairy products. In the organism, it is mostly found in cartilage, skin, and lungs. And as you remember from the previous topics, sodium is a major extracellular element, a major extracellular cation. Potassium is abundant in nature in soils and plants, mainly found in plant-based substances. And then examples are apricots, peaches, potato, cabbage, and also in animal-based substances or animal-based foods such as real chicken meat and liver. In the organism, it is found mainly in muscle, liver, brain, and erythrocytes. And the potassium is a major intracellular element. It's a major intracellular cation. Chlorine is found in nature in the form of sodium chloride and potassium chloride, especially in water, but less in plants. It is taken in the organism mainly in the form of salt, sodium salts, or potassium salt, but in general sodium. In the organism, chlorine is found less in tissues than in liquids. And also the chlorine is a major is a major extracellular anion. Chlorine is absorbed from the intestines and the central extracellular fluids and tissues with more fluid and less protein. All three elements are absorbed from the small intestine. There is an inverse relationship between them in terms of affecting absorption, causing each other to be extracted and preventing the absorption from the intestines. Deficiency can be seen especially in herbivores, for example during feeding to cattle, licking stones containing salt or placed in front of them. And in this way, the balance of sodium and potassium in their food is ensured. Since sodium is almost non-existent in plant food, herbivores and partly humans who feed on plant foods have a high sodium requirement. In addition, since they take more potassium than sodium, even a small amount of sodium is extracted from the organism without being absorbed due to an inverse relationship. White herbivores, especially deer, migrate great distances in search of salt and therefore sodium. And hunters also benefit from this. They prepare traps by placing pieces of rock salt in some places. In a way, these animals lose their lives for sodium, unfortunately, and it's devastating. What are the functions of these elements? They are involved in the maintenance of normal osmotic pressure and acid-base balance and in the transport of gases. They influence the water binding ability of plasma proteins. Sodium and chlorine ions are important in maintaining muscle and nerve stimulation. And in this respect, they act as counterparts to calcium and magnesium ions. Sodium and potassium compounds in the blood play a critical role in the production of digestive secretions, such as pancreatic secretion and bile. And free hydrochloric acid in gastric secretion is produced from sodium chloride in the blood. And even we can say the most important use of chlorine is synthesis of hydrochloric acid in gastric tissue. In addition, the potassium ion is required for certain metabolic reactions, such as transphosphorylation. And here you see the reference ranges for serum sodium concentration in some species. And the decrease in sodium concentration is called hyponatremia, and some causes are water intoxication, kidney failure, chronic kidney failure, diarrhea, vomiting, etc. And the levels in blood are expressed in, as you see here, also in the table, millimole per liter, or in some milliequivalents per liter. Hyponatremia, it's an increase in sodium levels in the blood, and dehydration or overactive adrenal gland can be a reason of hypernatremia. The table shows us reference ranges of serum potassium concentration in different species, cattle, dog, cat, and horse. And a decrease in potassium levels in the blood is called hypokalemia, chronic kidney disease, overactive adrenal glands, diuretic drugs, paralyzed or striated muscle, heart muscle problems can be a reason of hypokalemia. And the conditions seen in cattle, hypokalemia syndrome, which result muscle weakness and lateral recumbency. And here a picture of Pierre et al. 2000. And hyperkalemia is an increase in blood potassium levels, an extensive tissue destruction, adrenal insufficiency, tetany can lead to hyperkalemia. Here you see serum chlorine concentration, reference ranges of serum chlorine concentration in cattle, dog, cat, and horse. Hypochloremia is a decrease in chlorine levels in the blood and rarely seen, and causes are respiratory acidosis, metabolic alkalosis, vomiting, and cystic fibrosis. And cystic fibrosis is an autosomal recessive genetic disease of the lung, pancreas, intestine, and sweat glands. Hyperchloremia is an increase in chlorine levels in the blood, and the causes are excessive administration of isotonic fluids, diarrhea, kidney problems, overactive pituitary gland, and some drugs. Sulfur. In nature, sulfur is found in amino acids as sulfhydryl, disulfide, methylphenol, and used by humans and animals. In the organism, all proteins, especially the proteins in hair, feathers, horns, and nails, tendons, mucin, bile, salivary secretions, hormones such as insulin, vitamins such as thiamine and biotin, enzymes such as coenzyme A, triose phosphate dehydrogenase, 16 dehydrogenase. So these are some examples carrying sulfur in their molecular structure. Sulfur enters the digestive tract in two forms: inorganic form and the organic form. Inorganic form, which means sodium, potassium, magnesium sulfates, is absorbed directly from the intestines. Organic form, in the form of sulfur bond to certain amino acids in proteins, and these are the methionine and the cysteine. Inorganic form is absorbed as sulfurous amino acids after the proteins are hydrolyzed in the intestines and broken down into the building blocks, the amino acids. And the sulfur leaves the body mainly for urine, and also hair loss, nails, digestive secretions, and saliva. What are the functions of sulfur? Most organic sulfur is oxidized with inorganic sulfate and passes into the bloodstream. And sulfur that survives oxidation in the liver is used in the synthesis of various sulfur-carrying compounds such as amino acids, sulfur-carrying amino acids, heparin, heparan, or any compound require sulfur or sulfates. Some of the inorganic subsulfates are used in the detoxification of toxic molecules such as cresol, diphenol, indoxal, etc., which are the products of putrefaction from the intestine. And steroid hormones such as androgens and estrogens are also conjugated with sulfate during their metabolism. And my dear friends, we finish the bioelements one. And here is the references that I used to prepare this presentation for you. Can obtain any of them for further reading and also study in deep. And the next topic or the following topic will be Bioelements-II, the part 2 that we will study trace elements. And for the biochemistry, clinical biochemistry, and more about the lab work, you can visit my website, BiyokimyaVET, and also you can subscribe or follow my Instagram channel, BiyokimyaVET. And don't forget to subscribe, click on thumbs up, and open notifications for further news. See you in our next topic, and goodbye. Stay safe, my dear friends.